I have a friend who said that he had stopped watching news reports on the media because it was always so depressing, discouraging, and that was before the current pandemic of coronavirus, with all the suffering and pain and agony that it's causing across the world. Today we're celebrating good news, the greatest news ever. The Christian community are rejoicing in the glorious resurrection of Jesus. We remember how he was taken to the cross after a totally unjust trial. The judge said there was nothing wrong with him, and yet he condemned him to be crucified. And there, as the prophet had said would happen, he was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and accustomed to grief, crucified, dead and buried, and then on Easter Day, the glorious news. He's not here, he's risen from the dead. But not everyone believes it. Many have doubts and questions. Why should we believe? We don't believe in God or in mighty miracles. And sometimes Christians find it difficult to accept this enormous, amazing story of how God raised Jesus from the dead. So I want us to look today at some of the reasons why I believe and why other people have believed. There are many other reasons that could be added, but these are 6 reasons that I want us to look at the occasional times when I have a doubt or a fear, an apprehension. I refer back to what I believe about the resurrection and realize that Jesus was the unique Son of God. Never anyone walked on planet Earth like him, and God raised him from the dead. So I want to share with you 6 reasons why I believe. And all around the world today, many people in Pacific Islands, in sheltered home groups, in individuals facing opposition, fear of death, other groups gathering together through the media, rejoicing that Jesus is risen and saying, the Lord is risen indeed. So here are 6 reasons. The first one is that the Bible tells me so. It is my textbook. It is essential. It is an amazing book, the most widely circulated book in the history of printing. And the Bible tells me that Jesus had said several times that after he was raised up, certain things would happen. He spoke about his suffering and then his being raised. The disciples didn't understand it. They questioned themselves, what's he talking about? They were looking for someone who would raise up forces against the Roman occupation and set the land free. But he was of a different type and had a different mission. His mission was to change people, not regimes. So Jesus said that he would be raised up. The gospel witness of the early church, he's not here, but he's risen from the dead. And that was why there was no body in the tomb. And the early church, as they moved out across the empire, seeing thousands of people coming to follow Jesus, preach Jesus and the resurrection. It was to some people confusing. Some of the people at Athens thought they were talking about 2 different gods, Jesus and the resurrection. But that's what they proclaimed. They centered their preaching on Jesus and the fact that he was raised from the dead. The second reason is that the Bible would never have been written if something miraculous, dramatic, amazing hadn't happened on that Easter day. Here was a poor man from Nazareth, a despised little village, who had made enormous claims about himself, about his relationship to God as being one with God, about him being the Christ, the Messiah, and he was condemned by the city, authorities, by the powers that be, to an ignominious death on a cross. And yet these people sat down and wrote the message. Books weren't written 10 a penny as they are today, but this was special and they had to write about it. And the nature of their message was remarkable. They were saying that the first witnesses were women. Now, if you're inventing a story, you take the most powerful witnesses first of all. Women weren't allowed to be witnesses in the court of law in these days, and yet these were the first witnesses to the fact that Jesus was risen from the dead. The third reason is the big question: who moved the stone? How come that the tomb was empty, that there was no one there? Who had done it? Was it Jesus' followers? Maybe some reflecting, this is what he said, he'd rise up, we've got to do something about it. If they had done it, if his disciples had taken the body, do you think they would have risked their lives afterwards, facing all sorts of oppositions, beaten, thrown in prison, facing death for something that they knew was a fraud? I don't think so. Or was it his enemies? Had they come and overpowered the Roman guards, taken the body away, so that there would be no veneration of the tomb and the body? Well, if they had done it, and then suddenly saw thousands of people responding to the call to follow this man, would they not have said, look, this is where the body is, we did this or that or the next thing, to nullify the progress of the Christian church? So it seems that the evidence is clear that the tomb was empty. Lord Darling, the former Chief Justice, highly respected, he said there exists such overwhelming evidence, positive and negative, factual and circumstantial, that no intelligent jury in the world would fail to bring in a verdict that the resurrection story is true. The fourth point I want to make is about the spread of the church all around the world. In the Western world today, Christian faith is declining. There's no doubt about that. Church numbers are getting smaller by the day. But yet, round the world, more and more people are following Jesus. In some surprising circumstances, they've discovered that Jesus is the light of the world. Today, a third of the world's population claim to some extent to be followers of Jesus, 2,000 years after his death on the cross. And the power of the risen Christ is let loose in the world. The fifth reason is that the Christians changed the day of religious celebration. Many of them were Jews, had been brought up before they were converted to Christianity. They worshipped on the Sabbath, and some of them still did that. But then they gathered on Sunday, the first day of the week, to remember and to proclaim the Lord is risen indeed. And they celebrated the Lord's Supper, remembering the Passover and remembering Jesus said, do this to remember me, how his body was broken, how his blood was poured out. They came with joy to celebrate that, because it wasn't the end. The cross wasn't the end. It was a strategic and amazing event when Jesus bore the sin of the world, stood there in our place. And he said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so they gathered with joy to celebrate his death and on the first day of the week, his resurrection. But the most important thing at the end of the day is that Jesus continues to transform lives. I'm the resurrection and the life, said the Lord. Whoever believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. All sorts of people have responded. He sought out in his lifetime the lowest, the least, and the lost. Some mighty were called, but many of them were ordinary people like you and me. And he promises that those who believe in him will never die, that he has destroyed the great barrier of death, that he's gone through it, and he will take us through it into eternal life in his presence. Some of the greatest people in the world have responded. Isaac Newton was one of the greatest scientists ever, many centuries ago, and yet his finding and his writing has been the basis of astrophysics today. He was a devout believer, and he said that it was after he prayed to God that God illumined his mind and gave him the understanding of these great physical properties in the universe. Many humble people have found that in their circumstances, sometimes dire circumstances, they know that Jesus is with them. He changes lives. And that is a great affirmation, that Jesus is the one risen from the dead and ascended to heaven. He sends his Spirit to be with us, to be within us. And as he was raised from the dead, so he raises men and women up to new life who come and who trust in him. Horatius Bonar, the hymn writer, put it this way, so simply, so profoundly. I looked to Jesus, and I found in him my star, my sun, and in that light of life I'll walk till travelling days are done. That can be yours and mine as we look to him and see Jesus, put him at the centre of our lives. And in that light of life I'll walk till travelling days are done. And he said as he's risen, I go to prepare a place for you. If I go, I will come again and take you to be where I am, there you may be also.